Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us here today for the Restaurant India web series. Today, we're talking about how do you deliver sales and what are the new insights that we have got as we have gone into a semi-lock, unlock situation during this COVID-19. Though things are looking up, business is coming back to some extent, but it's really now how we strategize as restaurant owners, as restaurant operators, is what is really going to make a larger difference to our business as we go forward. It has indeed COVID. I think there's no parallel sort of crisis I have ever seen, and particularly for the restaurant industry, more so when social distancing, contactless are really the buzzwords, and you really don't know how to sort of. I mean, I just went over to a restaurant the other day, and I was wondering how people will eat food with the mask. I mean, they'll have to take it off in order to eat it, right? So there are lots of to and fro with the sector in terms of there's a lot of uncertainty of how to operate the restaurants, and then of course the pandemic itself puts a lot of doubt once it comes into your restaurant, and the whole sort of containment and sealing of the area becomes another issue. So indeed, but I think during this pandemic, what I'm also seeing is how restaurant owners, they are trying to find their way by innovating new ways and means. Cloud kitchens for restaurant owners is something that has been now a matter of talk and a matter of innovation in the last month and a half. Also streamlining operations, building a delivery business at large is becoming big. Rejigging menus is something in a big way that is again happening. And I think what I'm seeing, and it was the first time I spoke about DIY food meal kits back in November 2019. And I think it's become such a way forward. I mean, I hear most of the restaurants today going into whether it's cocktails or whether it's food meal kits. It's something that is to be looked forward to as to how it will emerge. And I think most importantly, it's about engaging with the customers in new and novel ways that we are going to talk about today. So welcome everyone who's joined us here today for this talk. And we have a stellar panel today who's going to sort of done entire spectrum of from cloud kitchens to office catering to wedding catering to restaurants and dining in, and even to FMCG and thinking that, making it for the mass market. So I'm very excited to talk to the panel as we go forward. And let me start with Mr. Sanjay Vazirani, who is the Chairman and MD of Foodlink Services. Mr. Sanjay, you've got a big food business, and I mean, you primarily started in the catering business, which became then your big food arm, but also you are there in restaurants with your different formats, both in Chinese as well as casual dining. So today, what is it that since June 8th, we have seen some lockdown being seized, and particularly, I mean, Maharashtra, while it has been on the sort of the crutch, I would say not a lot of movement over there, but in other cities, in other states, we have seen a lot of other movement. So what has been your take from June 8th to now in terms of dining in opening up, or people just ordering into their own houses? What is it that you have changed and are doing right now currently in the face of the lockdown?
Hi. So Ritu, it's been a little tricky situation because, only little bit of takeaway we have been able to put together out of 2 or 3 restaurants here. Hyderabad is one place where there is little takeaway, but obviously numbers aren't really showing, the excitement which we are looking for. I think the path forward, what we are spending time majorly is on, creating some kind of hybrid models as we go along, where we understand catering business more than maybe restaurant till date. And we are trying to figure out if our restaurants can be, doing a dine-in as in when we get to, open up. Takeaway, of course, we are focusing, improving packaging, improving, order taking capability, delivery, maybe even food pickup from, around the restaurant we are kind of working on. And maybe starting to do, small little catering out of restaurants so we can sweat the asset when it opens. But I think time will tell, how it pans out once the regulatory allows us to open the restaurants, what capacity. We've been working on few models where we can make very compact home catering vertical out of our restaurants now. Of course, learnings are also about frugality, little cost focus on granular way, where we have been invariably once going is good, we tend to go overboard. So I think those are the things we are just putting in order to be able to get started as and when, situation improves.
So, there has been a talk about takeaway versus delivery. I'm sure you're focusing on both takeaway as well as food delivery model. Where are you seeing a bigger promise? Where are you seeing that there is apparently more customer, people would want to step out of their house, right? Even if just to pick up the food from outside the restaurant. Do you think the restaurant industry is doing enough to capitalize on that aspect of customer behavior?
So to me, takeaway is not a recent move. Even, in 2019, early 2019, expert and analyst had predicted that it will grow, the takeaway will grow threefold. 2023, it will be 3 times the size it is now. So many aggregators coming in play. To me, city, the consumers are going to be a little reluctant for the time being to, come and dine out, surely because, there's a, fear of infection, or there's a little depressed, incomes they have. The market size has reduced to whopping 48-50% for the dine-in for sure. So I think a blend of, a dine-in and a takeaway. And as I said, if you can find some other means to be able to, and that three-prong approach might be the future for us to be able to take our casual diners forward.
Sure. Let me come to you, Rashmi. At Fresh Menu, you probably were the early movers in the cloud kitchen space, and you picked up at that point a very healthy menu, and that too a menu which was variable every day, or maybe a couple of days where you would refresh the entire menu. So today, in the wake of the pandemic, how are you changing the business model? What kind of trends are you seeing from the customer, and how are you sort of making, as Mr. Vazirani was saying, you have to sort of optimize your own cost model in order to be able to match what you can give to the customer during the current times?
Yeah, I think like everyone, I think for us also it's been one of the most testing times. Some of the things that we have kind of done, and I think I'll try to share as much as possible. I think first big change was the whole SOP update on the COVID safety norms, because I think that itself was a big change on how do you how do you make sure your employees are safe, your kitchens are safe, the processes have changed, contactless delivery, the packaging changes, for example, the secondary packaging that came in was another big change. Reduced manpower to try and manage distancing within the kitchen premises, and change of process on how you hand over food to aggregator delivery boys. I think multiple of those process changes, a lot of menu changes, because Fresh Menu was built on single serve food on the go, healthy eating in office mostly. And right now the demand that is there is at home dining or with family. So I think a lot of menu optimization, menu engineering, trying to save cost wherever possible, reduce a menu because sales are much lesser than earlier times, and you cannot carry on with the menu that you were running earlier. So menu changes. I think we are learning the two trends that we are seeing is, on one side, people are looking for healthy alternatives, looking for food with benefits, immunity booster, high protein, something that fits their diet expectation. I think that's one trend. The other trend is people going for indulgences. What I can't make at home and what I get bored of home food is what would come from outside. So biryani, desserts, pizzas, ice cream, noodles, or something exotic which is not being cooked at home, I think is clearly the other pattern we are seeing. So I think we see people flip-flop between extreme healthy choices and extreme indulgent choices. The other, another piece that we are seeing is people are very open to finding meal enablers from providers like us. So we launched a marinated meal, a chicken product. So you could get, let's say, half kg marinated chicken tikka or a peri-peri chicken steak from us, and you can finish it the way you would like to. So I think the meal kits or some of the sauces, seasonings, things that they would like to experiment at home. I think everybody is trying to become a chef. So that's another enabling thing that people like us could offer. So we will be experimenting with it. I don't think it's like a huge trend, but it's picking up. I think future, I would think a lot of future is meals at home would get easier. People would be open to experimenting with right from pre-prepped sauces to frozen ingredients being used at home, ready curries, and you just do a 10-minute effort to finish it off kind of products. I think a lot of change on how do you engage your customers, the digital content, recipe videos. We try to do PDF recipes to send on WhatsApp to customers. So create new forms of engagement. I think there the take is witty content right now is doing better than normal brand push. So engaging audiences is another big thing. Cost control, I think, is probably takes the maximum effort, because I think whoever would survive at these times is probably there for the long haul. I think the world would get better, people would come back. I think whoever adapts faster and whoever can manage cost today is obviously they're ready for future. So I think those are the things that we have seen or we are working on. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. People are social animals at the end of the day. You know, they're not meant to stay at home. They're meant to actually be going out and discovering and experimenting. And eventually, I think for whatever time the pandemic is going to push us down, but there is no denying that people would go out and eat restaurants or would be ordering in. So I'm totally with you over there. But yes, you're right. Whatever adjustments we need to do with our business right now is what is going to sort of show what our long-term game is going to be like. So totally with you. Let me come to you, Ashish. You know, I was reading about the small snippet that you sent me about your DIY cocktails and, you know, how you are helping people to sort of be high even and they can do it themselves, so to say. So what is it, or what kind of experimentations are you doing at Whiskey Samba and your other restaurants to be more engaging with your customers? And, you know, I think this DIY in cocktails is something that might just stay with us even when the pandemic is over. So how are you capitalizing on that?
Ritu, I think for the bars, it was really important when the lockdown was in place to have just public memory and, you know, top of mind recall. And it's very difficult to do that when you can't serve alcohol or people can't come to the restaurants. But during this time, apart from everyone wanting to be a chef at home, what we noticed was that people were really, you know, initially they was straight drinks, that's what they were making. But after some time, you get bored of consuming, say, you know, drinks straight from a bottle. And the flair that people have needs to come out both inside the kitchen and behind a bar. So we started some really simple do-it-yourself cocktail kits where we said, let's enable everyone to be a bartender and really in the comfort of your home, with the comfort of your spirit, whip up some great cocktails. And that was a very interesting field for us, you know, to try and experiment. And it's done pretty well. It's also, you know, kept the brand alive despite these difficult times. But there's definitely been traction. And I think people have a flair for showmanship. You know, at the end of the day, if it's tough to get a kitchen outside because your kitchens are built inside. But listen, if you can shake a shaker and make a cocktail in front of someone, that showmanship and the ability to customize your drink, as long as it's very simple, comes up. So I think we tapped into that market early on, which was useful. But in the dine-in trend, and you know, like Sandeep, like you've mentioned, like other panelists have also mentioned, that it's critical to look at the business in multiple factors. So there's a dine-in, there's a delivery, there's a takeaway. And I think till now, fine dine restaurants and bars only looked at dine-in. And now there's obviously a delivery and a takeaway component, which is really had to, out of a necessity, had to evolve. But I see dine-in, which is the core segment. You know, I'm not, I for sure it's tough times, but I'm not giving up on the dine-in segment. I'm saying, listen, after 9/11, everyone expected the worst out of the airline industry, but really they had the best decade after that. Yes, we have to be super cautious. There has to be cautious optimism. We have to all be responsible in upping the hygiene standards, safety standards. Agreed. But the reality is that, listen, restaurants are about those offline dates finally happening. They're about, you know, people doing business meetings in a certain place, or girls catching up, or guys catching up over drinks or over dim sum. And I think that need, that fundamental need, is not going to change. Yes, the requirement for hygiene is going to exist. Pre 9/11, we didn't see malls having security frisking you, baggage checks, etc. Similarly, post COVID, the hygiene quotient is going to be key. As long as businesses can give you a sense of assurance that they're hygienic and safety, I think that is key. But after that, I really see, and we've opened a restaurant. In fact, I'm sitting in one of my restaurants as we speak, and I'm seeing a week-on-week increase in dine-in footfall. So I really do believe that this, hopefully sooner rather than later, will come back to what it should be. But in the process, it's given us a great experimentation time to look at delivery, look at do-it-yourself cocktail kits, and to up the hygiene standards.
Sure. And I mean, just for my understanding, are the restaurants, particularly in Cyber Hub or One Horizon in Delhi and Gurgaon, are they experimenting with sitting outside? I mean, though I know we're in the bang in the middle of the monsoon season, so
Yeah.
that's tough. But
No,
I mean,
you know,
the
maybe
distancing.
if I walk around, I can show you what we've done at one of our restaurants. You'll appreciate in India, it's very hot from a weather perspective to necessarily sit outside all day, especially for lunch. But we've taken the outdoors in. So instead of plexiglass and slightly sterile ways of social distancing, we've taken planters and they've become like sort of the forced social distancing, but kept the soul of the restaurant in place. So I think it's very important not to lose the romance or the soul of a restaurant visit while making sure that all the norms are adhered to, if not exceeded.
Sure, absolutely. I think it calls for some great amount of experimentation. Gautam,
Yeah.
there is something I would like to ask you. I mean, you have the best biryani in Hyderabad, which people always relish, and particularly now that we are in festival times, there's Raksha Bandhan today, and there was Eid yesterday. Have you seen a spurt of people coming out for festivals? They want to dine in, spend time with their family. I mean, even with the social distancing norms that we are all trying to obey, do you think this curiosity in people just be with family, at least during these days, which are so important to everybody during the year?
I think couple of last couple of weeks we have started to see some traction in dine-in, especially. Typically we have a good percentage of our business coming from large groups. These large groups, 4 plus to 10 plus, are either on weekdays the office groups which come for a lunch, or dinner during weekday or weekend where families come. So over the last 4-5 weeks, what I've seen is that family outing has been rather very little. In fact, as all of us would know, I think the weekend business is almost 40%, 40-45% of the entire week in a normal scenario. But that kind of spike we are not getting because the family outings have not yet started to the extent they used to be. So we are not getting the large groups, we are getting smaller groups. But yes, I think the positive I see is in the last couple of weeks, which I guess it is a combination of fatigue and the fact that people are coming to terms with it, plus brands like us are making a lot of effort to assure people about the measures that they're being taken. We have started to see some momentum. I think it's still far from what we want it to be, but I would say it's a ray of hope and positivity, which tells us that over the next couple of quarters we could actually come back.
Sure, but I mean, do you feel that particularly now that more good days are ahead of us and more festivals, and Independence Day was always such a get out of the house kind of day for everybody, even when there was no liquor. I mean, the restaurants were full with people having food and meals. So do you think, I mean, considering the run from at least from August to December is always very good for the
Yeah.
food industry, given that there's so many festivals and other holidays and so on. So I mean, how is it, even with the limited amount of dining, how are you planning to engage with customers to at least get them to come out and eat or order in during these these welcome days of the year?
Yeah, so I think there are 2-3 key insights in the way brands and brands like us are approaching it. I think one key insight is on brand assurance. So people are worried about their health and safety. I think that's a big one. So one of the things every brand almost is doing is how do you communicate largely digitally, sort of the mobile phones, etc., about what measures you are taking. So I think that's a very important driver. Whosoever I have talked to in the industry, saying if you are making a 50-60% recovery in business, what is the single biggest driver? I think the single biggest driver is assurance that when I am going or I'm ordering in, the food is safe, there is hygiene, there is safety. So I think that's one thing. The other thing, which is again linked to the fact that most household incomes have been impacted, I think, is that Indian customer was always value conscious. I think it has become even more so. So brands like us, what we are trying to do is, I think, delivering value in different manners. So one of the interesting insights we are seeing is that larger combos which serve to 4 to 5 people are actually getting more traction because people are ordering at home and they are having meals together. On the other hand, there are people who sort of very price conscious. So brands who do not have entry level products, which are in a zone of anywhere between 75 to 125 rupees per head, that is also gaining traction. And incidentally, we never had that kind of casual dining space. We experimented with that product, and today 25% of our transactions are coming from that one single intervention. So I guess these are 2-3 insights which are important. One last point I would like to make is that at least what I've seen in the business is that people are not willing to experiment. People are going to go to their core brands, and within the core menu they will go to the core product. So in our case, going by, we sell a lot of products, obviously biryani plus kebabs and a lot of stuff, has enabled us to actually have a very short menu, and we have seen that people come and ask for the favorite product. They are not so much willing to experiment today because I think there is this whole fear of the unknown, if I may use the word, which brings the customers back to their favorite product. So I think that has enabled us, the restaurant industry, to keep compact menu. So probably we are running 30-40% of the menu which we used to run in normal times. So these are insights.
Yeah, no, I'm going to come to the menu part in a little while. Once I sort of speak to Sandeepan also. Sandeepan, the corporate Hungerbox has always been known for its corporate catering business in one sense, so you have a delivery for corporate customers. And I do believe that a lot of ordering in, particularly from cloud kitchens, was very much a corporate scenario wherein, the 5 guys used to get together and used to have like some meal ordering in their offices or just canteens as such. So how have you changed your business model in the current pandemic times to ensure that there is not complete loss of business? And from where I'm seeing things, I see Bangalore being one of the highest place for technology offices, and not a lot of technology companies are planning to open anytime soon. So just to save the dent, a large dent from happening, what kind of pivot have you done in the recent times?
Yeah. Hi everyone. Right. So we have been, so immediately as soon as lockdowns got announced, the first thing we did was enable desk deliveries, right? But as you all would understand, any company, even during shutdown, has to have about 3, 4, 5% people coming in, keeping the lights on in their organization. So in order to cater to them, we started with things like desk delivery. So cafeterias were shut down, but you could get food delivered to your desk. That's how we navigated the first quarter, right? But as you rightly said, about 6% people visited offices in the last quarter. This quarter things are a little better. It's in early double digits today, and we expect that to be so in during this quarter. Here, while companies are now looking at that, once we reach about 20-25% employees coming back, we'll have to restart our cafeterias. That time, a lot of technology interventions are being put in place, and we are kind of helping all our client companies. So we serve about 126 large corporates across the 24 cities in the country. So all of them, we are putting in technology interventions like social distancing, navigation through Bluetooth, crowd control, through, access controls, etc., etc. All that, UVC scanning of food before it enters the cafeteria. All those interventions are being put in place. Couple of trends that we are seeing, that we feel are, the time for that has arrived in our country. One is, food vending machines, right? Do-it-yourself kits. They existed for a long time, but there is that point in time where it's just the right time for that product, right? I feel vending machines, food vending machines, their time has come, right?
Is this real food?
Yeah, no, I mean, by food dispensing machines, I mean like everything that you can get out of these dispensing, machines, largely, a large fridge, right? It can dispense out, from grocery to, fully cooked food, even your RTC and RTE, the entire gamut of food, coming out of these machines. They have been there around, fringe, products, but I think their time has come. And over the next couple of years, we are going to see a huge surge in that business.
Sure. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. But I mean, I'm still wondering what the vending machine is dripping out. Is it dripping out food? Or I've seen packets and I've seen chips, even cold drinks, beverages. But, I'm quite keen to see what the real food vending machine will look like. And I think it might be just there with us to stay. Now I have a question to the entire panel. There's been big talk about cloud kitchens and, using our existing kitchens as cloud kitchens for that matter, which is, I agree, for restaurant owners, it's very tough. The kitchens were never designed to be cloud kitchens. They were never designed for delivery. They were designed for, serving a customer who was sitting in the dining room. But I mean, what is the dampener for a cloud kitchen today? I mean, do you think because the delivery cost is very high and therefore, shelling out 30-35% commissions to third-party delivery companies, is that the real dampener? Or is it just the whole operational aspect of cloud kitchens, which is the real dampener today, which is not allowing, I mean, while I'm seeing that there is a surge of cloud kitchens, but I still don't see a big sort of takeoff of cloud kitchens as it should have happened in order to promote delivery. So let me start with you, Mr. Sanjay. What is keeping you away from going big time into cloud kitchens? Please unmute, please unmute.
Yeah, okay. So to me, cloud kitchen business has its advantages and disadvantages. I think a combination of dine-in restaurant and a takeaway is a better combination, because people definitely do look for a experience and are wanting to connect to a brand to be able to order. I think, people associate an experience, if at all they have kind of had an earlier dine-in experience, then it's easier for them to order. Advantage allows, it's very simple also. I think the entry barrier, there's hardly any entry barrier for anybody to get into a cloud kitchen. It's just that you need to go to an aggregator and, get yourself enrolled, and you only pay when there is a order to be given. But I think people in these times would be surely very, very skeptical of, where the food is coming from. And all the panelists are talking about, hygiene standards and the new SOPs and new way. Cloud kitchen somewhere, doesn't give that confidence, which I think, which people do look for. And also, I think, a lot of cloud kitchens, the process of cooking is frozen food, where in India, still people are to be attuned to, the thought of having frozen food at home. Traditionally, scratch cooking has been the key, where, the entire the dining experiences in the country work on. And I think people would definitely be more comfortable to order from some place where there's a complete scratch cooking happening.
Sure.
To me, because again, we are a company which is more tilted towards, larger catering operations and I think the price points, the difficulty of profitability. I think most of the cloud kitchens, what our study says, struggle for EBITDA. And I think that's where I think to us, it doesn't look like a doable proposition in these times. But a combination, yes, a combination of a dine-in and a takeaway or a cloud kitchen, whatever you call, is something that we will look forward to.
And I mean, just as a forecast, I mean, how would you define the revenues between cloud kitchen and a dine-in? I mean, what percentage will come from
think
either?
60-40, 60 from a dine-in still, because again, those experiences are here to stay. Once, there's little more ease to the current problem, I think people will want to come out and sit across the table and have a drink and eat. I don't think so that's going to go away. So 60-40, 65-35 is my guess.
Okay, sure. I mean, we love to see that happening for restaurants in the coming times. Rashmi, I mean, you run a pure cloud kitchen model. Please unmute. So what challenges do you see in terms of, commissions that you have to leverage out, in terms of operational problems that, you face? And I mean, what correction would you want to see in the cloud kitchen model in order to make it, let's say, more optimal, more profitable?
I think because we started as a pure cloud kitchen, I think we've done a lot of work to make cloud kitchen model and the benefits of cloud kitchen model are far more visible because people like us executed it the way we did it. I think one big factor that probably a lot of people miss out when they think of cloud kitchen is eventually brand of food would sell. A menu, a combination, the novelty that you would offer or the excitement around your presentation or taste that you bring in. So you could be a legacy brand, you could be a new brand. But I think the brand is the power, and aggregators would not just bring you orders because you open a cloud kitchen today. So your menu needs to have a pull and you need to do your own brand building, which the aggregator is not going to do in the short run. So I think the power is in still branding, in product innovation, in execution, in the taste and the quality that you work for. So I think it's a long haul business. For people who are thinking that because dine-in is not working and let me get into a cloud kitchen, I don't think it's going to work for them. So you need to be a passionate food player for you to really be able to successful in either or a combination or one of the formats that you choose to do. So that's, I think, the first take on it. For us, we've made the EBITDA work, we've made the kitchen P&L work. I think the benefits of cloud kitchens on the other side is very low cost kitchen. You could change your menu pretty quickly. You can take a lot of data-backed decisions. I think if you're focused on delivery alone, you could actually make the P&L work at very small amounts of revenue. So far more scalable than a dine-in business model. I think those are the benefits of the cloud kitchen business model, and delivery as a macro trend is here to stay. So I think the overall customer sentiment or environment would support this business model far better for the future. So it's a more future-proof business. But I think the brand building part is a tougher part. It takes much longer. It's not easy. There is the art and science to brand building, which I think is what everyone needs to be aware of. The commission part, I think, while it's wishful that, I could wish the commission away, but there is a cost to delivery, there is a cost to customer acquisition, and there's a cost to building the business out. So I guess you'll have to work hand in hand.
Sure. But I mean, overall, would you feel that it would be better if less commissions were charged? I mean, in USA, I was reading, they were already the state has intervened over there to bring down or put a flat commission percentage by third-party service providers for delivery. I mean, Philadelphia now has about 15%, which cannot exceed. It's a layer they've put that, it has to be no more than 15% for any kind of delivery commission. So if it's something that becomes a worldwide trend, I think India will not shy away from it. India will also put this. So do you think with the current commissions that you pay to third-party delivery versus a 15%, that we're already seeing happening in other parts of the world, the whole model is going to become more viable?
Ritu, the biggest challenge between the world delivery model and India delivery model is our average order values. And therefore the percentage commission looks higher. Otherwise, let's say the aggregator goes to a flat rupee fee per order. So, you could switch over from a percentage model to a flat rupee model, because there's a cost to delivery and cost of customer acquisition. I guess that eventually has to work for both of us.
Sure.
Like I can recommend a 15% commission or a 10% commission, but customers will have to start buying a lot more deeper density of orders. So I think that we have to travel that journey and get there.
Sure. In Indian restaurants, I mean, I'm sure it's not just an Indian thing, it's a global thing. Most restaurants, particularly in the higher segment, whether it was a fine dine or a casual dine, which was towards a fine dine, we always saw that the play was on quantity. So the quantities were such that the customer had to reorder at least a second platter of the meal. Do you see that happening in cloud kitchens also? I mean, which could, as you
cloud
bring
kitchen
payment into the order.
Is very different. Yeah. So in our case, because there's no ambience and because there's no decor and music and everything else to cover for the experience, I think the volume of food that we give as value for money, I think is a different equation than dine-in restaurants. So I would think that this whole proposition that, I'll give less per plate, or, I will optimize it in a way that the customer is forced to buy more. I think unfortunately on the delivery side, the expectations always give me more food. So, any restaurant that would try to give a smaller portion, try to price it differently and, push for an add-on, etc. I somehow feel right now we've not evolved to that point.
Sure. Sandeepan, so what kind
and
of
purely
menus?
Because it's a food sale, I think the feedback on food and taste and portion or the time of delivery or the freshness of food, I think the feedback's very, very strong. One point that Sanjay brought up is, the rest of the industry was on scratch cooking of food, while a lot of cloud kitchens that have come up is on frozen food. I think that's something that every brand has to figure out of what's their value add for the customer. Why should customer pay a price for their product? So if it is scratch cooking, if it is a combination of scratch plus, some prepped product, or is it purely frozen? I think customers eventually will get savvy. They will understand the difference. They will know what they're paying for, what quality of product. That's another journey on the optimization.
Sure. Sandeepan, let me come to you. What is your take on, so I mean, obviously when you were sort of managing an office, there was a whole big menu that you were trying to do. And everyday menu probably looked different. But now, given the pandemic times, how have you rejigged the menu to make it sort of more cost optimal for you, and also to be, and have you seen a D2C increase? Particularly, I'm sure there were a lot of people eating in offices. They knew that, Hungerbox was serving. So are those people reordering from you on a different channel?
No, so we today we just serve in institutional locations, right? So we do not have a model where we serve at people's homes. We are a pure institutional food tech company, right? And we plan to remain so. Right. So in terms of what's being consumed at home at offices today, as I said, today there's a lot of desk deliveries, right? Where the immediate requirement was that less of curries, more of dry items, so that there is less of mess created, less of odor issues, etc. Because people are having food in their bay, right? But the trend that we are seeing, where little bit of cafes are opening up. There, we have a new segment called immunity boosting, food items, right? Mm-hmm. So even the normal meal, companies are asking us that, can you kind of enhance it, add some more immunity boosting items, because that's in demand, that's in fashion right now. And so we have created a new segment where, from beverages to food items, all these, items that were listed out on the Arogya Setu app, etc. Those items are being added so that that's the new trend we see catching up in office foods.
Sure, but I mean, people are working from home. They should be sent food, right? Even if they're working from home, they're still working.
Correct. No. So we have been evaluating that with a lot of our clients, right? But it's easier said than done, right? For example, in Bangalore, you have some employee of yours, working out of Pina, right? The other one is down Electronic City, almost jumping into Tamil Nadu, right? So you have employees scattered all over the city, right?
Yeah.
So and if you put up an HR policy, you need to be able to make it available to every employee of the organization, right? You cannot discriminate. You can't just say that if you live in Koramangala, I'm going to provide you food, but if you live in Bomasandra, I'm not going to provide you food, right? So working out some model where each and every pin code is covered with food is close to impossible, right? So although a lot of companies, we have been in discussion with a lot of clients who have expressed that interest, but this entire last mile logistics and how does it and economically, right? There has to be some economic sense to that entire thing. You can't take 100 rupees for delivering food worth 150 rupees, right? So that economics is not falling in place, and we see this as a shorter thing. People will come back to offices as my fellow panelists mentioned, right? There is that romance around going and dining in, right? That's the whole idea of a restaurant, right? You can do that much in your own home. So it's like movies, right? We just don't go there. We go for the popcorn to see people around, your social beings. So they are not going to go away as institutions, right? It's just a matter of time that a lot of them will slowly open up, right? And we are focused on how do we hygienically provide food, because food is going to be an essential item, right? It's not a choice. It's not like a gym that you can do without that in an office premises. Food is essential. So how can we provide employees with safe, hygienic food? That's what we are all working towards, so that when employees come back, they are treated to good, hygienic food in the office.
Sure. Gautam, I would love to know that, Paradise, going there and eating a biryani, that's the entire charm of Paradise. You get that hot biryani coming out of the kitchen. So now how are you trying to change it for delivery? What kind of menu changes are you making, or how are you making it sort of, people are able to experience biryani in the same way at home as they're experiencing it in your store. So what kind of changes have you brought about?
So fortunately, I think Paradise always had a good takeaway business. This has been for years.
Right.
So delivery is, let's say, 5 years old in terms of reaction, but always. I think one of the critical things, and you asked a very valid question because this has been in my mind. Food which you have at restaurant, food at your home, is always this. It's always probably 45 minutes later than what it is cooked. So I'll give you an example. Like dosa is one of the most popular dishes. But is dosa the most popular dish on delivery? It is not, because somehow now we have not been able to figure out how to deliver a nice crispy dosa even after 45 minutes. Fortunately, biryani, the product that it is, I think it lends itself very well to delivery. It holds largely the product. So packaging plays a big role. We do a lot of research in terms of packaging, in terms of food safety, temperature control, trials. So last mile, 40 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, 5 hours, and make sure that the product taste is as close to dine-in as possible. Let me tell you, with all honesty, I think never be able to match home delivered food, never be able to match the food which you have fresh on your that is something which is still probably a technology to come there. In terms of, I think one aspect which I've seen the channel, let's say, to be activated is somehow I felt that delivery channel is very discount led. So when you were talking about costs, I think you were talking about commissions. I would like to add two costs to that. I think packaging cost, which is an incremental, at the same time, commission, discount cost. So I think over a period of time, and Paradise as a brand is never into, let's say, too much of marketing, if you may, or too much of discounts and all. But lo and behold, we have combos now, we have discounts now, we have entry level products now. So we are doing all the jing bang just to make sure that customer expectation on delivery channel is met. But yeah, I think as everyone will agree, it starts with food. First, you have to deliver food which is as close to your restaurant as possible. Once you do that, then other things are easier to achieve, I would say.
Yeah, totally agree with you. Let me come back to you by after asking Ashish this. Ashish, I mean, with the DIY cocktails, how are you sort of making sure that the portioning and the taste to the customer is the same as what you are able to offer in the store? I mean, as Gautam was mentioning that, the customer is probably going to have it 45 minutes later. So do you really put things separately and expect the customer to shake it everything at home? And second is that, do you see this as also a potential entry for you into like more FMCG side, with cocktails being off the shelf product?
I think, Ritu, for each category, be it dine-in, delivery, or takeaway, it's very important to customize the menu to best suit that format. You have to genuinely make it a killer product that survives in that format. So, for example, if in dine-in, the barman doing showmanship, or the barman talking about and doing, freshness on the table, and if that is key, then so be it. In delivery, you don't have the ability to do all of that. Hence, you have to, find the most suitable product. When I used to run, when Yo China did a massive delivery program, honey chili potato, which was the most popular dish in dine-in, it was very rightly said right now that dosa, Gaurav mentioned that dosa doesn't survive. Similarly, honey chili potato didn't survive in delivery. So what we've done with the do-it-yourself cocktail kit is really looked at our understanding of what flavors worked at the bar, and said how do we recreate the menu for the do-it-yourself with those flavors, but customized to that program. So for example, we know elderflower does very well, we know cranberry does very well. So how do we create mixes? And then again, so the format for do-it-yourself is very simple. What we send has to just be mixed with what you have, and that's it. Right? So it's super simple. It's a lot simpler than do-it-yourself kits where you're mixing multiple ingredients. In this, you just mix the spirit that you have at home with the a lime margarita mix, or a cranberry cocktail, or whatever the mix that you send. You mix them, shake it, and serve it in a nice glass, and that's it. We've also dehydrated some garnishes, and we send out garnishes so that the glass can look pretty. But I think the core messaging here is really that customize your menu to the relevant format, and don't just piggyback on what's on your existing menu.
Sure. And do you see this potentially as your entry into FMCG?
I would love to. I think Whiskey Samba, we'd love to get into FMCG, but unfortunately the law prohibits us to serve it with alcohol for now. And I think this FMCG explosion cannot happen unless the spirit is pre-mixed. But when that does come of age, I think that market is ready to explode.
Sure. Mr. Vazirani, you also mentioned about FMCG earlier, that, maybe with sauces or with some food products, it's something that you would like to experiment with?
So currently we are trying to, look for some Pan-Asian sauces which we could, but if there's no scale, then at this juncture to kind of indulge in something that's going to be just a small retail from a restaurant or a merchandise from a restaurant might not be of great interest to us. But we are looking at, something that's scalable and that can be sized into a larger market. We're experimenting. Maybe 100 days down, we are targeting to either do it or not to do it.
But D2C itself is becoming such a big market. I mean, it's become sort of the go-to buzzword in these times, and there is a whole lot of products which are being developed just for purely D2C market. But anyway, I'm going to take some questions from the audience. I see they're coming quite rapidly now. So let's take the first one from Anisha Singh Motwani. Can we give her the mic, please? Anisha, please unmute before you ask the question. Anisha, Are you? Please unmute before you ask. Okay, so let me ask a question. That would the panel suggest the cloud kitchen concept only for the next few months as the better way to go, or would they suggest opening for dine-in? I think Mr. Vazirani answered it, but maybe he might want to elaborate it further.
No, so to me, as I said, temporary situation, maybe 3 months, 6 months down, things are going to be coming back. So, and you can't do anything temporary in this, serious business of F&B, it burns your hands before you realize, and any investment which you make cannot be of a short term in nature. So you got to have a plan. And I think dine-in coupled with a takeaway, coupled with some kind of, easy to cater at home, 15, 20 people, hot meal or a interactive a la carte or an exhibitional cooking meal, I think is the order I recommend to people who want to do this.
Sure. There is Raj Chatterjee who's asked us from Facebook, is that how about a shared kitchen model where 3 to 4 brands come together and start supplying from a single kitchen, help in saving on fixed costs? Who would like to take it? Rashmi, would you? Okay, Ashish, go ahead.
No, Ritu, I want to firstly say I agree with Sanjay and Gautam's thought on both these questions of yours on cloud kitchens as well as shared kitchens. If e-commerce after 20 years people are saying omni-channel is the way, meaning online, offline, mixed, shop in store, etc. Well, similarly for food, guys who have built successful brands in the restaurant business, very frankly, are best suited, in my view, to run cloud kitchens, because there's already a surety of where the biryani is coming from, where the food is coming from. So you're basically increasing distribution through the cloud kitchen network. So for example, you can have one Paradise in Delhi as a store, but then you can, out of the 123 zip codes that Delhi has, you can service 123 of them through the cloud kitchen. But at least that one, everyone is familiar of where that thing is coming from, it has a certain romance, memories associated, hygiene is assured, etc., etc., right? So I think we are missing the woods for the trees by saying either or. I think the omni-channel approach is probably a better approach, number one. Of course, you'll have only dark kitchen players like Fresh Menu, you'll have only restaurant players, but the omni-channel approach is a very fine approach. Secondly, as far as shared kitchens are concerned, at the end of the day, you've got to be EBITDA positive on your format, right? If the shared kitchen allows you control over hygiene and EBITDA, in being able to monitor your food cost without having to share your oil with somebody or your refrigerator with some, sure, go ahead and do, till we try it out, we'll never know. But at the end of the day, you need control over hygiene and control over cost.
So, there's another new model which is on the anvil now, being done quite abundantly outside India, which is host kitchens. So would the restaurant industry prefer to work with the host kitchen model? I mean, from my understanding, it's supposed to bring more economies of scale to the entire process.
No, like we have.
Yeah,
please.
Go ahead.
So we have a restaurant in Cyber Hub. When we were, approached, it's the wine company where the full, back-end kitchen is developed for Italian food. And there's 250,000 people that work in the Cyber Hub area. Right? And eventually, assuming the post-COVID times, these people do come back to work. Can the Cyber Hub Pizza company operate out of the wine company kitchen from an asset utilization or sweating the asset perspective? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Sure. Anybody else in the panel who wishes to share another point of view?
I think the host kitchen format is, I think in principle, a great concept for restaurants to try and scale. I'm not sure if at the moment getting into a new host kitchen would be the best situation for someone to experiment, because there's still added cost that you will have to incur. Sharing a cloud kitchen without proper partitions or proper rules and storage, your material, your presentation, packaging, I think there are too many layers to this business to just theoretically agree that I will share it with someone, because there are too many items to be segregating and doing it properly, because eventually it's your customer, your brand. So I would think that it is easier said than done. But if somebody could crack it and if they can do it together, nothing like it.
We love to see that day happening. Okay, I'm going to give the next question to Krish Sridhar. If we can have him on, please. And Krish, please unmute before you ask. Please unmute and ask the question. Go ahead, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for insight into how the industry is going forward. I've got two questions to ask. I'll combine it together. One thing about the aggregators taking the major share of the commission has already been addressed. Yeah, the US model is what I was thinking about, whether the government would bring, which has been already addressed. My next question is regarding this post-COVID era. I just want the panelists to view like generally there is a trend wherein vegetarian food is moving better. As per the stats I've received from aggregators, how do you all foresee the food industry to go forward with regard to veg against non-veg? And yeah, I'll ask this first. Thank you.
So yeah, I'll address this. Currently, the trend which is being seen, and we ourselves have done a little survey with our existing guests. There's a huge decline in the non-vegetarian food consumption, and as I think time goes by, it's going to be more of vegetarian food, which would be more in consumption. I think the health reasons and hygiene reasons and lots to it, but eventually it is going to be the vegetarian food which will sell much more than the non-vegetarian food.
Gautam, go on.
So I kind of feel that this whole veg versus non-veg, I think in a country like India, where I think a lot of people are learning to eat chicken or consume it more, especially on the first meat that people consume being chicken, I think it is not going to decline. It will probably keep growing because there are just way many more of us who need additional protein intake. A lot of diets which keep recommending high protein. So I think there could be more vegetarian consumption per se, with some customers being more conscious about environment, about vegetarian being healthier. But I think the non-vegetarian trend is not going away. And even from a COVID perspective, there's no sign of any COVID transmission with chicken or any meat products. So I do not think that somebody should believe that a lot more vegetarian will start selling. That's probably not a long-term trend.
Sure. Gautam, would you like to comment on this?
My comment would be there is nothing like veg biryani. I hope biryani continues to sell because non-veg, within that mutton biryani is the real biryani. So I think on a serious note, some of these macro trends like vegetarianism, veganism, plant protein is the latest buzzword, right? People are wanting to put plant proteins and all that. The big question is whether such black swan events like COVID accelerate these trends. So there are these long-term trends which happen over a period of decades, right? Interestingly, I've been talking to my colleagues in the industry which sell largely non-veg. Actually, their non-veg percentage has gone up. So in new mix, if suppose somebody was selling 80% non-veg, 20% veg, actually it has become 85%. The insight in that is vegetarian customers today versus the non-vegetarian customers are less experimentative, more amenable to cooking at home. I mean, I don't know how true that is, because in my case, my business is largely non-vegetarian. But I think that's a contra insight which we are getting, saying that in brands which have 70-80% non-veg percentage has actually gone up, even though the absolute value has come down. But menu mix has favored in terms of non-veg, because among the two types of customers, non-veg customers still are more open to ordering from outside rather than vegetarian customers. I think just a hypothesis, but I think just to say, I just hope that non-veg continues well, because our business is based on non-veg.
Sure, but I mean, instead of frozen, don't you think plant-based meat is a better idea?
Time will tell. I guess I guess I haven't had enough experience in this area to say what customers expect from a meat product like a biryani, let's say. Can that be delivered through a plant-based protein? If it can, obviously, if the world is moving towards it, I think brands like will also move towards it. But I'm not sure whether at this stage, I'm in a position to say whether that taste or that experience can be delivered in Indian cooking, maybe. So,
Correct. Yeah, I mean, the plant-based meat is essentially a substitute of meat. And Indians
yeah.
anyway don't like, if vegetarians, Indian vegetarians don't like the flavor of meat so much. Okay, I'm going to take very quickly 3 more questions. And before we wind up the session, I know time is almost up. So Alan is next. If we can quickly have him asking his question here. Alan, please unmute. Okay, I'll take on Alan's question. Alan is asking that I have a delivery kitchen, started in the month of Feb and lockdown took place. So I'm having a tough time getting orders as my brand is new in the market. Now, how should I sort of try to reverse this situation, make most of the situation, so to say? Somebody would like to take it up, Rashmi? What did you do in your early days?
Yeah, I think it's a tough position because you've just started. I think the only thing you could do is focus on a core customer group, trying to build a community on WhatsApp. WhatsApp could be very useful at this moment, while people could use to order either directly on WhatsApp to you or some through Swiggy and Zomato. But I think build a network or an engagement with users. Flyers, etc., are all dead right now. Nobody wants to do a newspaper insert. So I think WhatsApp, phone, video, recipe is probably the only way to bring in customers right now.
Sure. Sam Financial is next. Sam, if you can be put on and we can ask his question. Please unmute before you ask. Okay, I'll take his question. Just a second. His question is that in the current pandemic, what is your suggestion about setting up a cloud kitchen rather than a fine dine setup for new ventures? I'll go for a cloud kitchen. What would you suggest?
Right now, wait.
Mr. Sanjay, what would you suggest to him?
He should buy the kitchen which the other gentleman wants to get rid of if he's not getting any customers.
You almost got a business deal done there.
I think wait and watch is the right thing to do. No point committing any capex anywhere in these times. So at least next couple of months, one has to wait.
I think we'll take this one final question from Raghavendra. Can he be given the online? He's actually asking a question from Sandeepan. Can we have him online? Raghavendra, please unmute. Okay, I'll take his question in that case. He's asking, when do you think people are going to come back to office? What are the changes expected in the volume of business in this category? What is your suggestion to existing kitchen setup with no business from last 4 months? Would some setup close by the time offices come back? I mean, he's essentially asking that if you're actually making for offices, what are you expected to do now?
True. No, so that's $1 million question. I would love if I knew the answer to this question, right? But all that I can say is the worst is behind us, right? We couldn't have a quarter worse than the April, May, June quarter. This quarter is surely going to be somewhere better than the previous one, and the next one, the October, November, December quarter is going to kind of bring some sanity. Right, and most companies, as we can hear, are looking at restarting full-fledged from 1st Jan onwards. right? So these are, one treacherous quarter behind us, 2 more to go, and I think we'll be all back in business. And to start a cloud kitchen, I think Ashish very rightly put it. Cost controls and all that are the holy grail. I would add one more item to that, which is kitchen utilization rate. Right. So as a cloud kitchen entrepreneur, I would like just be obsessed about what's my utilization rate and how do I improve it. And for me, everything else is just a channel, right? Whether it is the corporate consumption, channels like Hungerbox, etc. Whether on the other side it's the aggregators, the B2C guys, all of them should be looked upon dispassionately as just channels for distribution for you, and equally evaluated on their merits. So long as your kitchen is being more and more utilized, I think at a certain percentage of kitchen utilization, all the numbers, all the matrices fall in place. And I think that should be the only obsession that an entrepreneur should have right now.
Sure. So, as I bring the session to a close, I would very quickly like all of you to give me one comment as to what, obviously I'm trying to sort of contradict the economist Keynes here that, in the short term, we don't really have too many answers. In short term, we cannot predict what to do. But in long run, what is it that all of you are planning to do or sort of bringing changes into your business? I see somebody is asking me a question about how AI is going to shape cloud kitchens. So in the long term, how are you planning or looking at your current business to make it more viable? And, therefore, what changes are you bringing in your current operations to make the business viable, let's say by December 2020? So let's start with you, Sanjay sir.
So, Ritu, to us, it's the first time, we've been in this business for nearly 17 years. And the first time we've been able to dock the ship by default on the side and, overhaul it. Invariably, we have been doing course corrections, while we're on a horseback running. And out of the 2-3 businesses we are in, catering, which is, quite aggressive and the toughest, and of course, highest level of EBITDA has come from there. We are now kind of looking at a serious, revival post. We are targeting coming October. Coincidentally, next 12 months we are wanting to kind of sit back and wait, because to us, our major business, which is outdoor catering, would only happen post coming season. Because it's a seasonal business. Somewhere we are also used to 4 months, 5 months not have much action. Of course, we're not used to so much of non-action. We are putting our plans together. We are kind of refining our teams. We are kind of looking very critically at the efficiencies and the teams, the bandwidth which we are sharpening up. We are going to be even a borderline case. We are looking at either putting them on PIP, performance improvement, or we might look at a replacement. So we're doing all that would efficiently take us. I personally am very bullish. We were earlier 3-year horizon. We had a plan, but now we have kind of made it a larger plan, and we're going to execute it as soon as this gets over. We are targeting 1st April as a start date. When we roll out our new business plan with more larger numbers and larger geographies to open in all the 3-4 verticals we are in. Our indoor banqueting also, we have a huge thing coming up in Gujarat, which will be the largest banqueting arena of Gujarat. Foodlink is just building. In fact, we were to launch it end of April, but we are now targeting to do it 1st of November and then wait for it to kind of start. So I think it's all about efficiency, organizing our, Mancom, XCOM, organizing our, reviews, mechanisms, just getting a little sharper with, so we're utilizing this time for that.
Sure. Rashmi, any major business rejig that you're doing currently?
No, I think for the longer run, I think we're becoming very bullish that, one, we've built a strong brand and we know how to operate cloud kitchens. So we really hope that we will come out stronger post this. But this downtime is actually very good to rethink, restructure, reset processes. I think a lot of work on menu, especially I think it's a good time to innovate, test out products, pricing, costing. I think it's a good time to reset all the parameters, hoping that you will recover soon. You will be able to scale back. And I think some of the things that earlier used to keep postponing that we will change it later, and those are bigger changes. I think it's a time to do those bigger changes.
Sure. Sandeepan?
Food is an evergreen business. So we never thought that there would be recession, right? But we are, if I might call a bit of recession, but we'll come out strong. No matter what, people have to eat, thrice or four times a day. So things will be behind us very, very, very quickly, and will be one of those industries that will recover faster than other industries too, right? 3-4 trends that I see, and let me call them out. One is the intervention of technology, right? Whether it's inside a kitchen, whether it's delivery, whether it's in even allowing people inside the premises. A whole lot of technology interventions are no more going to be a choice. They were vanity metrics at one point of time. It's going to be a necessity metrics. So technology intervention across the channel will deepen. Number two is health, safety, hygiene. These were all nice to have words, but these are going to be a non-starters, right? There's going to be serious focus in these areas, and companies who do well there are going to thrive. Right? The third trend we see is RTC, RTE, what you all call do-it-yourself kind of kits, becoming more and more popular. The time for that has come. And the fourth one, as I mentioned, food vending machines, we see, that kind of coming of age. And so these are the four trends that I see, kind of opening up over the next couple of years, and the industry overall doing, very well in the coming years.
Sure. Gautam?
Yeah, so I think the biggest learning, if you sort of ask me, is efficiency. So restaurant business have been fairly, fair share of variable costs and fixed costs. I think one of the learnings which I have, and probably continue to have, that is how we can make most of the fixed costs, variable costs. So rental, for example, brands could be negotiating rentals into revenue share for the long term, because that's a very big fixed cost in the business. Even employee costs. So, for example, in Indian cooking, you have specialty. So somebody is cooking Indian biryani, kebabs, etc., etc. We have said that why can't we cross-train these people? Right. This time, how can I make my labor more efficient? It's normally supposed to be more difficult in Indian cooking versus, let's say, a Pizza Hut or a KFC. Everybody can do everything. But I think brands have to succeed through ups and downs like these. Efficiency is the key mantra for me. I think anything and everything we can do to build efficiency, not only for now, but give up the temptation of opening up when business is back. I think run a very efficient, very tight organization. I think we'll be actually better off 4 quarters down the line. Like sales, we might actually have better revenue.
Absolutely. Ashish?
I think, Ritu, it's going to be a golden opportunity to build hygiene into the DNA and make sure that this is a change that is here to stay with whatever format, dine-in, delivery, takeaway. But every employee, every moment of truth gives you that confidence as a guest that, yes, this place is gold standard of hygiene. That's one. And the second, I completely agree with Gautam that I think it's a great opportunity to run a tight ship. To look at cost structures overall and make sure that profitability can really be squeezed even in the toughest of times. And, we're all working with lesser staff, we're working with a different supply chain, and, it is the need of the hour. So I think these two things, hygiene and cost productivity, are going to be the two key things.
Sure. I mean, I love the energy of this virtual room. It's just that everybody out here has sort of mentioned that, and I think you're right at a fundamental level that food as a business can never go out of season, right? it's something people would always continue to eat, whether they eat at home or whether they come and eat out. But it's not something that is gonna, its economics might change. You might want to do things differently, but eventually the business is always going to be successful to somebody who can manage the entire matrix, right? Whether it's the cost, the people, the menus, and so many other things and operational things that are go along with it. So thank you very much for joining us. And of course, I look forward to seeing the day when I can actually visit you all personally and be eating in your restaurants or ordering from Rashmi and Sandeep as we go ahead. But certainly times are tough right now, and together I think we can all beat it. And the industry is blessed to be learning from stalwarts like you, who can at least give them some hope and some ideas as to how they can keep it going. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank
Till
you.
next time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
And to all the attendees, kindly visit our Restaurant India page across media channels. If you have any questions, keep on posting over there. I'm going to request all my friends from the restaurant sector to help you find some answers that you need, and be able to address the issues that you are facing day to day in this business. Please remember that we are all with you and we're all in this together, and together we will get out of it. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.